After Henry,
I took a little tumble off the cliff.
at the start of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, you'll lose all of your skills levels from KCD1. However, that's a good thing because the stats and skills have been drastically overhauled in KCD2. Here's what's new. Let me know which of these new skills and perks interest you the most. We'll start with the main stat changes. Now, just so we're not here all day, I'm not going to go through and individually read every single new perk, but I will tab through them so you can stop the video if you want to read them all yourself. And I'll call out the ones that are the most interesting, that I think that are most interesting, that you'll probably find interesting as well. But starting with the core skills, now this more or less remains the same from having main level to strength, agility, vitality, and speech. But the perks underneath these, especially the main level ones, are significantly different. So as with KCD1, main level reflects your overall progress through the game and the general prowess of Henry. Your main level will grow as your strength, agility, vitality, and speech levels do, as well as through completing quests and progressing through the main story. And the main level for all stats and skills, as well as your main level, is 30, which is the same as KCD1. So having a look through the actual perks here, the main one that I wanted to call out is Martin's Heritage and Radzag's Heritage. So what this is it's, for one, it's a spoiler from KCD1, but essentially what these will do for Martin's Heritage, you will improve faster in sword fighting, crafting, and survival skills, as all experience gained will be 10% higher, and Radzig's Heritage, you will improve faster in heavy weapon, shooting, and scholarship. These skills will all get that same 10% higher experience gain. Now, you can only have one of these active, and I just really liked the sort of the role playing of these as Henry is dealing with his past and where he believes his heritage really comes from, whether it is from his adopted father or his real father. I just quite like these as perks that have been added to the game. But a lot of the skills in this line are more general focused, but some of the later ones down the line are actually quite strong, like Heroic Vigor. For each level of vitality, you'll gain an additional stamina point. Well Built, which will increase your carry capacity significantly more based on your strength, which is always a problem if you're someone like me that likes to hoard everything. Moving on to the strength line. Now, strength and its level mainly affects your weapon control and the damage you inflict using melee attacks, as well as the power of your unarmed attacks. It also increases your carry capacity, allowing you to fully draw powerful bows and make it easier to move and fight in heavy armor. Experience is primarily gained through combat. If you use weapons that require higher strength levels, you will gain more experience. There isn't anything I specifically want to call out in this line. It's a lot of things that you can expect, like say, increasing your carry capacity, improving how well you do in clinches, just like it was in KCD1. But there are more perks here generally across the board, but for the most part, they're very similar to what you would have expected from KCD1. A lot of those same perks from KCD1 are all sort of existent here in KCD2 across the board, but they can be slightly tweaked. Now, moving on to agility. Now, agility, as your level of agility increases, your melee weapon attacks will cost less stamina and be somewhat faster, as will drawing a bow. Your movements will also be quicker and you will suffer less damage from falls, perform better at stealth, handle heavy armor more effectively, and your dodges in combat will be generally more effective and easier to execute. And you gain experience through stealth and primarily through combat, especially if you use weapons that require higher levels of agility and dodging. Again, with this one, there wasn't anything specific I wanted to call out, but something to note is that the agility line, there are perks that will increase the amount of damage you do with piercing weapons as well as slashing weapons. So that things like the halberd for piercing and then things like swords for slashing, right? Whereas in strength, you've got those blunt weapon increases. So those perks are there. Whereas if agility, if you want to use those other sorts of weapons, agility is something that you want to focus on. Something I did notice during my preview time with the game is that you will increase agility quite often when you are dice rolling and like playing dice. So if you're trying to get that agility stat up, that's something that I would probably be planning to do. But vitality is an interesting one, which has actually taken over some of those perks that you may have expected from main level back in KCD1. Now, what vitality does here is your level of vitality primarily affects your stamina reserve and the rate of its recovery in and out of combat. For this reason, it is very important stat as it allows you to run and fight longer, attack more frequently, and withstand more blows. combos, your level of rest will also decrease more slowly. You gain experience primarily through combat, performing advanced techniques or combos, and of course through regular training such as running and overcoming obstacles in your path. So this is where you will see skills that you may have seen in main level previously, like Ascetic is one that was originally a main level skill that's now a vitality skill. A lot of the perks here reflect about how your health will drop and how fast you can sprint, your stamina recovery, that sort of typical things. One thing that I did want to call out is Die Hard. A wound that would normally kill you won't, and you'll recover 25% of your health once used. There is a cooldown before the perk can be activated again. Sounds like a super valuable perk that you can get later in the game based on its minimum level, but something that does sound like it would be definitely worthwhile using. And we'll move on to Speech, which is the last in this category. Now, Speech and Rhetoric skills will assist you most in conversations. The higher your level, the more likely you are to succeed in skill checks, which will aid you in your adventures, save you time, or help you gain great rewards. As for money, your speech will also make haggling easier. You gain experience primarily through conversations and using skill checks in them. Also, reading books will enrich your vocabulary and improve your rhetoric skills and argumentation. This line has a lot of similar ones you will definitely remember from KCD1, like Silver Tongue, but one of my favorite ones to call out is Jack of all trades. You get a bonus of +2 to skill checks. You'll also get twice the amount of experience from these skill checks. So just straight off the bat, that's just a +2 to any skill check that you have during dialogue. So no real negative to not having that skill, which I do appreciate. But most of these perks are really based around improving your dialogue, speech abilities, allowing you to sweet talk things a little bit better, as well as a couple of perks like say Battle Cry and Battle Cry 2 that seem to be more reflective to combat, as now in combat you have that option where you can actually surrender or Battle Cry or taunt, and Battle Cry with those perks will give you a bit of bonuses to actually having done that in combat. But now the combat skills is a category that is drastically different from KCD1 for a number of reasons. Now, just looking at the KCD1 skills here briefly, so you've got defense, you've got warfare, you've got axe, bow, mace, sword, and unarmed. Now, one thing to note in KCD2, there is no defense. Those skills have now been moved into warfare. And another thing to note here is that when you're looking at, say, the axe, the bow, the max, and the sword and unarmed that actually has no skills or perks here, in KCD1, these perks are actually just the combos that you can then learn for that weapon type. So as you like level up and learn more about the weapon, you then get those combos, which are the perks. In KCD2, this is completely different. So here you've only got warfare, which we mentioned. Now that's essentially encompassing the old defense as well. Now what warfare does is it is your overall skill as a warrior, reflecting your knowledge of combat and all matters regarding war, your ability to navigate battlefields, the experience gained in countless skirmishes, and your growing skill in handling weapons. The higher your warfare skill, the faster your attacks will be, and the harder it will be for enemies to read your intentions and parry your attacks. Your weapons will also take less damage during combat. Your warfare skill will increase as you improve your skills with individual weapons or unarmed combat. Now, something to note is that you'll have access to a lot of those initial skills that you had to say learn or get in KCD1, like feinting, evading, perfect blocking, all that stuff. The one major perk I wanted to call out is Ironclad. The weight of your armor you wear affects your speed of movement and how much stamina sprinting depletes. Using this perk, your armor will weigh you down 20 pounds less, thus having a lesser effect on your stamina. Neither your actual weight of your armor nor your carry capacity will change. However, this is an interesting one that isn't really in KCD1 in any real way. Well, there is speed in KCD1, it is a thing. Now, speed does exist in KCD1, don't get me wrong. When you do wear heavier armor, you do move a little bit slower. But based on my experience in the preview with KCD2, it does seem to be a bit more substantial in those differences to really show the difference. And that's reflective in also how you can switch your like outfits in the menus, right? It does make you be more inclined to say just walk around town in just like a normal outfit, then switch to say your heavier armor sets. Now, as we move on to swords and the other categories here, what you'll notice is that these actually have perks underneath them, and the combos are on a separate screen. So the combos are now broken out onto their own screen, and you learn combos from actually talking to masters and having them teach you those combos, whereas these perks are just like gained from using those weapons as you typically would. You'd use them, you would level up your abilities you would learn new perk points and then you can unlock them. Now, rather than go through all the individual perks for these, we're just going to fly through them very quickly because they're essentially very similar across the board. A lot of them are just improving your overall ability to use that weapon, right? Say it's overall damage. It could be adding bleed effects. It could be improving how well you use the weapon after a combo, those sort of things. There's nothing drastic I wanted to call out with all of these categories, but we'll just go through them pretty quickly. So for swords, the higher your swordsmanship skill, the faster your attacks will be and the more damage they will do, and the harder it will be for your opponents to block them. Swordsmanship increases based on using those weapons, and sword-like weapons include hunting swords, short swords, long swords, and sabers. The long swords have the advantage of having a longer reach, and the biggest disadvantage of these weapons is that they are usually inefficient against heavily armored foes, and that is when you want to use something like a heavy weapon. Now, a heavy weapon is more suitable for armored enemies due to their penetration power. Now, they do require less like martial prowess to use, so you'll be able to get a lot more bang for your buck with using them, very similar to KCD1, except the downside here is that they don't have a lot of like defense or like blocking capabilities, so you're best to combine this with, say, a shield. And then also something to note in the combos is they do have specific combos for heavy weapons with shield as well. And overall, the higher your skill, the faster your attacks will be, inflicting more damage and making it harder for enemies to defend against them, exactly the same with swords, and also exactly the same as it will be with polearms. So polearms were in KCD1, but they weren't their own skill line, which now they are their own skills and they have their own combos. Now, polearms are a unique type of weapon that has great penetrating power and significant reach, being that they are like a longer polearm weapon, and your benefits for actually using this weapon and increasing its stat are exactly the same. But we didn't get to use a lot of these in the preview section. There was one vendor that did actually sell them that I did grab and just play around with briefly, but there's not a lot of these in the early sections of KCD, so any sort of feedback and thoughts more about this weapon will have to wait until the full game when I've actually had a chance to play around with them a bit more. But I am excited to actually use the polearm weapons a bit more because they do seem quite fun. And lastly, we have unarmed in this section. Now, another thing that has changed from KCD1, unarmed was a skill back then. There were no perks, there also were no combos, and that's now different. There are combos for unarmed and there are perks as well. And this is one that I did actually want to call out a couple of specific perks underneath this tree as well. The first being Start Me Up. After executing a combo or Master Strike in unarmed combat, you immediately regain some of your stamina back. Something to note is that as far as we were aware in KCD2, Master Striking could only be used with a sword, and I believe that is still accurate, except it seems like there is a Master Strike available for unarmed. Don't totally know what that is right now. I just thought that was an interesting wording there, so definitely will report back once I know more. And the other one that I wanted to mention here as well is Sandman. It'll generally be easier for you to knock out or stealth kill someone, which is in the unarmed category, which you would think might be in those secondary skills, right? In that thievery section, which more on that in a little bit. Now, I did say last one, but I forgot about the marksmanship category, which is now encompassing your bows, your crossbows, and those like primitive guns, like those black powder contraptions that it calls out here. Now, the higher your skill here will mean that you have a steadier hand when aiming and make it easier to aim and hit enemies, which was always a challenge in the early stages of KCD1. It's definitely still the case here in KCD2. All right, on to secondary stats. Starting off with alchemy, the greater your alchemy skill, the more you can deviate from it without repercussions. In addition, to achieve truly masterful potions, you will need to follow up the recipe procedure exactly and have the ingredients as fresh as possible. Your experience will increase as you brew some more potions. Something to note in this list of skills here is that in KCD1, we did have a skill called Routine, which allowed you to auto brew potions. In KCD2, that isn't an option here, except I guess the trade-off is that you've got this Secret of Matter perk, which there are multiple levels of. Every time you successfully brew a potion, you get one extra potion of the same quality. So say if you perfectly create a potion, you'll get multiple copies of that just for that one cost. Now, something else that's different in KCD2 is that potions will have qualities. So you have weak versions of potions and then normal and strong versions of potions as well. So you definitely want to make sure you are crafting those higher level of potions, and a lot of these new perks are relative to allowing you to do that more easily or increasing the effects of those potions when you do craft them. Craftsmanship is a brand new line that does take place of the maintenance line from KCD1, except the difference here is that it does encompass the new blacksmithing that is in KCD2. Now, what craftsmanship is, reading the skill description here, it'll become easier to achieve a good result in weapon sharpening or blacksmithing, and you'll be able to forge more advanced weapons. You'll also be able to repair higher quality items when maintaining your own equipment, and you'll generally use fewer resources for repairs and laundry. Now, tabbing through the skills here, they are mostly around improving your ability to maintain your own equipment yourself and giving additional benefits on that, or improving your blacksmithing capabilities. But my favorite one here is Martin's Secret. Now you'll be able to forge weapons of the 4th, i.e. the highest quality. Weapons of this quality cannot be obtained in any other way other than by forging them yourself, and their strength and effectiveness is unmatched. Now, you will have noticed when looking at inventory screens in KCD2 is that weapons do have weapons and armor as well. They do have that quality range from 1, 2 to 3. Now, this is essentially confirming that there is a 4th, but you do have to craft them yourself, which I'm very excited to test out once I do spend more time blacksmithing, as in my experience in the preview, that little bit we got to do, it is actually a ton of fun. Next, we have drinking, everyone's favorite skill. So as your drinking skill increases, alcohol will be less effect on you, and therefore you won't get as drunk as quickly. If you do, the hangover will be milder and pass sooner. You'll also be of less risk to succumbing to addiction through frequent drinking, but beware, however high your drinking skill, you will never completely rid yourself of the risk of addiction, and unsurprisingly, you increase the skill by drinking alcohol. Nothing specific to call out here. It essentially just improves your ability to drink alcohol, allowing you to consume more, or in some cases, allowing you to get away with some crimes if you're drunk, or various things like that. But drinking is a ton of fun in KCD. Horsemanship is next. Now, horsemanship, as your skill increases, your horse's stamina consumption will decrease when riding at high speeds. Your horse will be less skittish when threatened, and it will be more difficult for enemies to throw you from the saddle. Now, you obviously increase this by riding your horse. Big surprise there. Again, nothing specific that I wanted to call out here. Most of the skills here are based around improving your horse's ability to either use the stamina it has, or give it a slightly additional stamina, or make it move a little bit faster, that sort of thing. But a lot of the horse's stats here will come from the actual horse itself, exactly the same as it did in KCD1 in my experience. But one line that I am super excited about is the Houndmaster line, which is returning from KCD1, which did come with the DLC when you were able to get Mutt in KCD1. Now you can just have Mutt as part of the base game. Now, his skill line is a little different here. It's all still based around things for Mutt, but he will have additional commands that you can give him in KCD2, something like Bark. You've taught Mutt to create a ruckus and draw attention to himself. This can be handy, especially when you need to sneak somewhere unnoticed. You can get him to bark by selecting the relevant command under commands. Mutt will start barking on the spot, so make yourself scarce quickly to pull off your ruse. Now, interesting thing to note here about some of these skills as we just tab through them is during the preview section, I was trying to steal a loot from this house, and I had Mutt with me, and he was just barking at something. I have no idea what he was barking at, but he actually drew the attention of the guards just because he was, causing a ruckus on his own. I hadn't told him to bark or anything. He was just being a dog, basically, and drew the attention of the guards, which then caused them to see me. So it's just an interesting thing to note is that Mutt might be worth having with you at all times, but he's not always technically going to help you. So you've also got those commands that tell him to stay or wait, or, go over there so you can do some sneaky behavior in other locations as well. Moving on to scholarship. Now, this replaces the reading line from KCD1. In KCD1, you did have to learn to read. That is essentially like canon. So in KCD2, Henry does already know how to read. Now, what this line does is the more scholarly you are, the faster you will read books and the easier it will be for you to understand their contents. Scholarship can also come in handy in all sorts of situations and conversations. So essentially, law things, like your knowledge of the world and things around you, that's when it will actually become valuable. Now, in this line, there's a lot of really interesting skills. A couple of them that I wanted to call out being liberal arts. You'll be able to recognize the difficulty of skill checks, but not your chances of succeeding. You'll still have to decide for yourself whether it's worth the risk. The effort of your reputation isn't taken into account on the display difficulty. And then you've also got these fundamentals of skills, which are also super beneficial, like medicine. Bandages will be 25% more effective, and healing effects of food will be doubled. Theology is another one. You'll be able to pray at shrines, crosses, and similar places. If you do so, you'll receive a buff that can protect you from mortal injury in combat and restore 25% of your health. This effect lasts 12 in-game hours. Seems like a super beneficial line to actually level up by reading books. It's just like like it was in KCD1. Reading books was always super beneficial. Stealth is what you would typically expect. The higher your skill, the less noise you make when sneaking, and the harder it will be for enemies to see and detect you. You will also find it easier to avoid complications on the move when using fast travel. Nothing specific I wanted to call out for this line. A lot of skills based around improving your ability to sneak, either improving your ability to get away once you've been seen, something like dealing a little bit more damage with surprise attack when, say, you are attacking from stealth, like, you know, think Skyrim stealth archer sort of play style, but a lot of things like that. Moving on to the survival line. Now, this is sort of a combination of hunting and herbalism from KCD1. They've basically just combined those perks from those two lines into this one, and then merged a lot of the hunting ones to just have, say, like 1 or 2 perks. So there was a lot of hunting perks that were a little bit, not irrelevant, but like felt like wasted perk points for taking a little bit in KCD1 to actually try and level up to do that hunting stuff. Now, the survival skill, the higher your skill, the easier it will be to you to hunt wild game and obtain more meat from them. Gathering herbs will also be quicker, and using fast travel will make it easier for you to escape ambushes and other pitfalls. And you gain bushcraft experience primarily by hunting game, gathering herbs, and processing your catch, drying, smoking, and cooking. And additionally, discovering additional places in the world and overcoming dangers whilst using fast travel will also contribute to your experience. Leg day is my favorite one of these skills, so you gain a little bit of strength every time you pick up herbs. I just think that's such a fun perk that I'll definitely be picking up once I do have the ability. And the last skill line to look at here is thievery. Now, this is a combination of the original lockpicking and pickpocketing lines. They're now combined into one, which is, I think, an absolutely brilliant idea. So as your level increases, you can tackle more complex locks, and the process will be less sensitive to your mistakes. When pickpocketing, your victim is less likely to notice your probing hand, making the whole process easier, and you'll also be able to identify some items in their pockets and pouches beforehand. What I really like about combining this is an issue that I had in KCD1 is that pickpocketing was just always such a challenge, especially to gain those initial levels, because you had to individually level up your ability to pickpocket and get those perks. Now, because lockpicking and pickpocketing are in the same section, you can be really good at lockpicking and then level up this line and then use those perks to gain the pickpocketing perks to then get better at pickpocketing. And then even in my experience in the preview section of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, pickpocketing is a little bit easier. For the most part, it's still essentially the same, but I have actually found it easier to follow that flow of, like, you know, moving the thing around and grabbing it and then getting out the door. It hasn't actually been as tricky as it was in KCD1. Same with lockpicking, actually, which did get some changes from the original game release of KCD1. It's now a little bit smoother generally in terms of its process. And the only real perk I wanted to call out here is Master's Thief. You can unlock simple locks almost instantly without the need for the minigame activation or committing a crime, but still be careful as looting and unlock chests. This still counts as a crime, but a lot of the skills here are obviously reflective based on improving your lockpicking or your pickpocketing skills, allowing you to do it a bit faster or get away with things a bit easier. But let me know your thoughts on all of the perks in KCD2. Is there any that I'm missing that you like wish were here, or any that you would have liked to see added? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.